I used to think there wasn't a person on earth I could trust more than my best friend, Jenna. We've been glued together since freshman year. Two broke girls sharing ramen and secrets in a dorm that smelled like dryer sheets and anxiety. She was there for the highlight reel and the horror reel. Helped me pick out the thrift store dress I wore to my first real job interview, sat cross-legged on my bed while I cried after my first miscarriage, held my mother's hand at hospice when I couldn't make my mouth form words. When I got married, she stood right next to me in a slate blue dress and dabbed my tears with the corner of her own bouquet. We had this running joke that we were honorary sisters. No last name in common, just 1,000 tiny loyalties that felt stronger than blood. That's the part that makes the rest of this so hard to tell. The first crack didn't sound like a crack. It sounded like my phone buzzing late on a Friday. Jenna's name and a message so breathless the text might as well have been shaking. "Please, can I come over?" "It's bad," I called. She answered on the first ring, voice watery and small. She said she had a blowout with her boyfriend, that he'd called her names that she couldn't be in their apartment another minute. "Pack a bag," I said, already on my feet. "Come now." "Say as long as you need." My husband, David, was on the couch when I hung up. He raised an eyebrow when I told him. "Of course," he said, like it was obvious. "We'll figure it out." When Jenna walked in an hour later, mascara and comet tails, hair up with a pen she'd grabbed from her car, sweatshirt swallowing her. She looked like a person who'd been sprinting away from something only she could see. I made tea the way she likes it. Too much honey, set a blanket on the guest bed, and told her to sleep. I fell asleep feeling useful, like the universe had handed me the chance to pay back all the nights she'd kept me from falling apart. The next morning, she made French toast with the heel of the bread and danced a little at the stove to a song my mother used to hum when she cooked. It was easy, familiar, almost sweet. For a week it stayed that way. Jenna fit herself into our house the way she always did in my life. Seamlessly, like a missing puzzle piece you didn't realize had been lost. We cooked together, trading knives with old muscle memory, stayed up late on the sofa watching trash TV and pausing to dissect every micro expression like it was evidence in a trial. She kept the guest room neat. She thanked us too much. The only thing that snagged was the way she drifted around the kitchen in a tank top and tiny shorts first thing in the morning, while David was making coffee. The first time I thought nothing of it. The second time, I caught the way she leaned against the counter when he felt, laughed at something he said, and touched his arm lightly like she was balancing herself on a moving train. "You really lucked out with this one," she said to me over her shoulder, winking, and I laughed back, because that's what you do when your best friend flirts like a firefly. Darting, harmless, pretty. Except after a while the light stops looking harmless. It looks like a spark landing on dry grass. If you want a list of the little things that should have made me speak up sooner, I can give you a scroll. My favorite lipstick, the one shade that makes me feel like I belong in my own face, vanished from the bathroom counter. I assumed I'd left it in a coat pocket, until I saw the exact shade peeking from Jenna's tote when she was digging for her keys. "Oops," she said, laughing when I touched my mouth and looked at her. "I grabbed it that first night by accident. Swear I meant to put it back." She tossed it to me, then tossed her hair. A silk scarf my mother had given me. The last thing she bought before her hand shook too hard to tie knots. Went missing and turned up under the guest bed. "It must have slipped when I was unpacking," Jenna said, wrinkling her nose like it was silly of me to be sentimental about silk. I told myself not to be petty. I told myself the important thing was that she was safe. I told myself she wouldn't cross the line. Because here's the thing about trusting people. Once you've built the story in your head that they are yours, you will write over every scene that doesn't fit until there's nothing left but your own handwriting. Meanwhile, David got quiet in that way he does when he's carrying something he thinks doesn't need to be anybody else's problem. He's a software engineer, steady like clean coat, does the dishes before I even think to ask, leaves me the last slice of pizza without making it a kindness. He's never been the type to peacock or perform. That week he cooked more. He lingered less. When I leaned in to kiss him in the hallway on my way to the shower, his mouth was already moving with the grocery list. The first time I saw them laughing together I felt relief, genuinely. They were on the couch, knees angled toward each other, laughing at some viral video. Felt like proof that my two favorite people could be in the same room without friction. And then I saw how close their knees were, the way Jenna's hand hung over the back of the couch, so her fingers almost brushed the back of his neck when she threw her head back. "What's so funny?" I asked from the doorway, trying to make it a joke. "Inside joke," Jenna said, bright as tinfoil. "You had to be here." That night, I stood in the bathroom longer than necessary, watching my face in the mirror while my toothbrush did its work, trying to find the line between jealousy and intuition. I told myself I was tired. I told myself the lipstick was an honest mistake, the scarf a true accident, the hip against the counter a woman and her own body in a kitchen that has always been ours. The next day, on my way out the door, I doubled back for a folder I'd left on the dining table. I wasn't supposed to be home at all. The house was supposed to be empty. The front door eased open on laughter. Hers first, and his, that low sound he makes when something delights him and he doesn't want to make a big deal about it. The kitchen smelled like coffee and sun on wood. Jenna and David were sitting at the table. Their heads were tipped toward each other, the way you do when you're talking secrets in a lab bar. His hand moved. Innocent, if you look at the footage in your head from far enough away. But it brushed her knuckles. The way they both snapped apart when they saw me felt like a firecracker went off onto the table. "Morning," Jenna sang, too bright, too sweet. "We were just talking about dinner. I found a recipe for that cheap pan thing you liked." Her smile had that gloss it gets when she's 3 gin and tonics in and pretending to be sober. "Can I talk to you?" I asked, my voice made of ice water. "Oh, in the hallway, door closed." I said it flat. "What's going on between you and my husband?" She tilted her head like I'd said something in a language she didn't know. Then she smiled the small smile that used to mean I'm on your side and now meant I'm already on mine. "Nothing," she said, and patted my arm. "You're being paranoid." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to laugh and roll my eyes and text her later about how ridiculous I'd been. Instead, I nodded like I was giving myself permission to be the villain in a scene I didn't audition for. That night after Jenna went to bed, I told David she had to go. I expected a fight. I got a nod. He didn't argue. He didn't soothe. He just looked relieved, which hurt worse than a bruise. When I told Jenna in the morning, she did the thing she has always done when she's squared by consequences. She made a performance of offense. Wild, she said, eyebrows high. "Kick a girl when she's down." She backed fast, a practiced hand, like she'd been living in a suitcase long before she brought it into our house. She left the guest room neat, sheets folded at the foot of the bed like a hotel. At the door, she hugged me hard enough to make my shoulder pop and whispered, "I hope this is what you really want." Then she was gone, and I told myself the air felt better. 3 days later, I came home from work to the kind of silence that has weight. No radio. No keys in the little bowl by the door. Half our furniture was missing. The TV we'd argued over in the store because I thought it was too big. The acres he saved for. The console table my mother found in a flea market in 1989. David's closet hung slack. His suit's gone, his running shoes gone, the ugly sweater I loved because it made him look like a pine tree gone. The joint account app on my phone showed a clean line of withdrawals like train cars clicking into distance. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Blue bubbles that stayed blue. I called Jenna because I am an animal that touches the stove to prove it was hot. Call failed. I moved through the house, opening drawers with my hands shaking so hard the measuring spoons chimed. The jewelry box where I keep everything that ever felt like a promise. My grandmother's wedding ring, a tiny gold locket with a photo of my mother at 19, the bracelet my father gave me when I graduated. Empty. The laptop with our tax returns and budgets and a folder labeled Sunday Kitchen. Gone. It took 5 minutes for panic to turn into the kind of anger that feels like a second heart. I went to the bank. The woman behind the desk had a sympathetic mouth and a policy she couldn't bend. "It's a joint account," she said softly. "He's authorized." I went to the police, and the officer wrote things down in a notebook, and then said words like domestic matter and civil court, and in the middle of explaining why there wasn't much they could do, he called me Han, which made me want to knock the pen out of his hand. My sister said, "You've been distant for a while, you know." Maybe, he thought, and then stopped because she hurt herself. Our mutual friends split like a cell. Half of them called and offered the kind of help that is real in some ways and useless in the ways that matter. Rides, casseroles, prayer. The other half stayed quiet or, worse, sent those long texts that start with "I love you" both and end with "I hope we can all be adults." I sold my car because bills don't care how you feel. I moved into a studio with a kitchen that looks like a hallway, and a window that turns the couch into a sun trap for exactly 22 minutes at noon. I learned how to live without the sound of someone else brushing their teeth across the hall. At night I lay awake and replayed every moment I could have said no or said enough or said get out and listened to the quiet answer. You didn't. 3 weeks into the new life, a woman I barely knew from an old job sent me a screenshot of Jenna's Instagram story. Private, but not private enough for a friend of a friend to keep it from me. Jenna, in a new city, sunglasses the size of teacups, holding a cocktail whose garnish was a literal flaming sprig of rosemary. In the background, the exact console table from my foyer, the same ring stain in the shape of Portugal. David's hand in the corner of the frame, the crooked knuckle I used to kiss for luck. The caption, New Beginnings. I had never wanted to throw a phone so hard. It would have been a good story if that were the end of it. If the clean moral was don't let anyone in your house who will steal your furniture while you're at work. The truth is messier and meaner. A month later, my credit card declined at the grocery store when I tried to buy tangerines and coffee. I checked my account while standing in line, that particular humiliation of being barked at by a little machine while strangers pretend not to watch. There were charges I didn't recognize, then a new card I definitely didn't open, then a retail credit line with my maiden name spelled wrong. I spent the next 3 weeks on the phone with banks and a board man at the Federal Trade Commission who recited the steps like a nursery rhyme. File an identity theft report. Freeze your credit. Place alerts. Send letters. I wrote to the 3 credit bureaus with my hands shaking and then called a lawyer when I realized the letter templates were designed for crimes committed by strangers, not by the person who used to sob into my couch because she thought her boyfriend was cheating on her. The investigator the lawyer recommended had a voice like gravel and the patience of someone who has waited outside locales at 3 a.m. more times than he can count. He followed paper like scent. He found the mailbox rental under Jenna's name in a strip mall 2 towns over, then a forwarding service linked to a burner email, but forwarded to nothing, then a string of packages signed for in a handwriting that tried and failed to be mine. He found a storage unit they'd paid for in cashware, behind a stack of boxes labeled gifts, sat my console table, my mother's flea market find, and 2 of the picture frames from our wedding with the photos replaced by glossy magazine tears. The police officer who met us there had a mustache and a script. Ma'am, he said, I can take a report for the stolen items. The financial stuff is a separate case. The separate case took on its own life. A detective from Financial Crimes called me, asked for more forms, told me she'd seen this pattern before. It's always the boyfriend or the best friend, she said, not unkindly. Sometimes both. I signed things. I wrote a victim statement that made my eyes sting because it felt like I was describing a person I used to be that I'd never get back. Months slid. I learned which debt collectors have hold music that sounds like weaponized Christmas. I learned how to talk to my landlord's eyes when I told him the rent would be late by 3 days and not apologize like sorry was rent. I learned that grief comes on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. when you find the scarf your mother gave you and it still smells like the perfume you can't afford anymore. I learned that the body is an archive. 8 months after the day the house turned into an empty set, my old coworker texted me at 6:12 a.m. You've seen this? And 3 links. Local news sites. Mugshots. Jenna's hair bleached badly. David's mouth set in that line I used to think meant resolve a now no means calculation. Arrested for credit card fraud and identity theft in a multi-county sting. The article said alleged a lot, the way it has to, and used phrases like financial exploitation and elderly victim, and the more I scrolled the more I realized they had not only used my name to open lines of credit, they had used other people's too, people who did not have the spare anger or the spare time to fight it. I felt a kind of satisfaction. That didn't look like what I thought justice would look like. It wasn't clean. It didn't make me want to dance. It made me sit on the floor and press my back to the cabinet and breathe like I'd run 5 blocks. The detective called later that day. We got them on surveillance, she said, and told me how Jenna had signed for delivery with the same little flourish she uses when she writes her name in birthday cards, how David had been the one to drive, how they'd both tried to talk their way out of the cuffs. They always do, she said. Not triumphantly, just tired. There was a hearing. I sat in the back because I didn't trust my face. David didn't look for me, or if he did, he didn't let his eyes stop. Jenna looked everywhere, but at the people she had taken from. She wore a cardigan that was not hers and shoes that didn't fit. When the judge asked if either of them had anything to say, David's lawyer did the same for him, and Jenna cried the way she used to when we were 20 and needed to get out of a parking ticket. They took plea deals. The paper said restitution like it was a thing that would float lightly down into my life like confetti. What I got months later in the mail was a check for $327.49, and a letter saying further payments were unlikely due to financial hardship on the part of the defendants. The scarf my mother gave me came home in a plastic evidence bag that made it smell like a refrigerator. It's folded in a drawer now. I have not worn it. People ask me if I feel vindicated. Sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I walked across a bridge I didn't build and it held anyway. And I'm grateful to every boring step, every form, every hold music, every affidavit. That made the structure. Sometimes I feel like the girl on the couch with the ramen is still inside me, and she keeps asking why I didn't see it sooner. Why I let a friend touch the back of my husband's neck in my kitchen and call me paranoid when I said the word lying. I tried dating once. A man with kind eyes who worked at the museum asked me if I wanted to see the restoration lab, and I said yes and then no because the idea of watching anything be mended made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I am not brave yet. I am polite. I am trying. The last time I saw David, he wasn't on a screen. I was getting coffee near the courthouse because habit is its own gravity, and he walked by on the sidewalk with a woman who looked like a clean page. He had a job again. I heard from someone who still collects other people's stories, and an apartment with light that looks like a fresh start. There was no part of me that wanted to run after him. There was a small part that wanted to scream. Mostly there was relief. The light kind, like setting down a bag and realizing you have hands again. As for Jenna, she sent one letter from county. It started with "You of all people know I'm not a bad person," and ended with "Please write the judge," and somewhere in the middle was a sentence about how when she found my scarf at the bottom of a box, she cried all night because of what we used to mean to each other. I didn't write back. I'd put the letter in the same drawer as the scarf because one day I want to be able to open it without my throat closing. If you want a moral, I don't have one that fits on a sticker. I have a handful of small things that might help somebody else. Change the locks, even if it makes you feel dramatic. Take pictures of your rooms the way they are when you love them so you have proof of what is yours. Make a list of the series, all numbers, even if it feels like superstition. Freeze your credit before someone else freezes your life. Do not let anyone tell you that intuition is vanity. In a dress, the words civil matter do not mean you are crazy. They mean the system is slower than your pain. Keep receipts. Not for revenge, but because memory will make a liar out of you when it gets tired. Mostly, know this. The person who hurts you on purpose will make a better story about it than you will if you let them. They will frame it with your better angles and your worst days, and they will post it with a caption that makes people say new beginnings, and you will want to scream in the comments. Don't. Build your own narrative on paper with dates and names and rent receipts and people who answer the phone, and let that be your loud. I let my best friend stay over because I believed love meant doors stay open. She left me with nothing because she believed love meant nothing I didn't say out loud mattered. Somewhere between those two beliefs is a wiser woman who changes the locks and still makes tea, who knows where the extra key is and who has it, who laughs in her own kitchen again because the light is good and the coffee is strong and nobody's fingers are hovering over someone else's neck. I am trying to become her. I am doing the dishes at night with the window open, and sometimes when the breeze comes in at the right angle, I can hear music from a car at the light, and for a second I forget the lesson and just dance. Then I turn the deadbolt because I remember, and I sleep.